All right, so today we're going to go ahead and start on our new section. And the first few examples are kind of review from what we did Monday. So for that first one, it gives us a bunch of information, and our goal is to figure out what y is. So on that list of steps I gave you yesterday, the first thing it told you to do was list the given information. So there are three given statements: gh equals 7y plus 3, hi equals 3y minus 5, and gi equals 9y plus 7. So we're going to write those three steps down, and those are all given. All right, once we have our given information down, the next step says, are there any vocabulary words? But I don't see any words like midpoint or bisector. So I go to the next step, and the next step says, can we use segment addition? Well, if you think about what it's telling you, it's telling us that GH plus HI is supposed to give us that whole thing, and that's what segment addition is. So our next step is simply going to be GH plus HI equals GI, and that is that segment addition step. All right, so now we've got everything set up, but we've got to solve for y, so we need to get those numbers in there. So think about what lets you take the letters out and drop the numbers in its place. All right, that's going to be your substitution step. So I'm going to plug all of the numbers in and substitute those in for the letters. Now we're just solving for y, which is what we did on Friday. So to solve this, we're going to have to combine those like terms or simplify. And then from here, I want to move all the y's to one side, so I'm going to subtract 9y from both sides. So that would be subtraction. And finally, we're just going to add the 2. All right, so the goal was to find y. We found y is 9. All right, the next three are going to be your vertical angles. So we talked about yesterday how vertical angles are going to be congruent. So these two things would be equal to each other, and that's how I'm going to set it up. So 7x minus 10 equals 3x plus 50. Once I set them equal to each other, we're just going to solve it. So you're going to subtract your 3x from both sides and then add your 10. The last step would simply be divide by 4, and when you do that, we just get x equals 15. Pretty straightforward. So now I want you to try the next two problems. So you're going to solve for y, and then you're going to solve for g. And I'll give you just a few minutes to do that. All right, so hopefully you were able to get y was 11 for part A. So we just set the two things equal to each other. You subtracted the 4y, added the 16, and then divided, and you got y was 11. Part B, again, we set them equal to each other. You just added the 4g, subtracted the 5, and then divided. So pretty straightforward on that one as well. All right, so on this next one, it gives us one step. So all it's giving us is angle 1 is congruent to angle 4. So I know I have to start with that statement. And I know at the very end it's going to be angle 2 congruent to angle 3. So I can write that stuff in. I know that first step is given. Now the rest of it we've got to work a little bit. So the next step says 1 is congruent to 3. So we're going to look at the picture. And I look at angles 1 and 3. Well, those are vertical angles. And they're supposed to be congruent, which is what it's telling you. So that is just saying vertical angles are congruent. So that's just using a theorem. All right, so now it says we're using transitive property. So transitive property is the one that lets you get rid of what repeats. So if we look at those two lines, if you look, you can see that angles 1 repeat, and that leaves us with angle 3 is congruent to angle 4. So that's that transitive property. Well, I haven't seen an angle 2 yet, so we're going to look at the picture and we're going to see if we can figure out where they picked up an angle 2. So there's the angle 2 and there's the angle 4. Well, those are vertical again, so it's the same reason. Vertical angles are congruent. And now we've got to figure out how they were able to get that last step. So if I look at it, it talks about angle 2, so here is angle 2, and angle 3, here is angle 3. Well, if you notice, those both use an angle 4 and we got rid of it. So what lets you get rid of something that repeats itself? That would be the transitive property again. So that one was just kind of a basic proof to kind of walk you through the vertical angles theorem. All right, the next several things just deal with different theorems that we can use in our proofs. I highlighted the most important ones. So angle addition and segment addition that we used yesterday are kind of both there. And then we've got that linear pair postulate and the vertical angles theorem. The other ones you might see occasionally, but those are kind of the biggies. And then if I put in that segment addition, because that's the one we were using the other day. So those are kind of our big ones that we're using right now. And then we've got a couple proofs that we're going to go through. Now, the next two proofs are really, really closely related to what you have to do on your homework today. So I think it's going to be really beneficial. So step one is just list your given information. All right, and I think it's sometimes helpful to actually see what's going on. So it's talking about angle ABC, and then it says that X is in the interior of it. So it kind of looks like this. And then ABX is 20. And XBC is 50. So that kind of gives you an idea of what you're looking at. So the next step says, are there any vocabulary words? And the only thing we've got is in the interior. So that's not really a vocabulary word. And the next thing says, can we use segment addition or angle addition? Well, I know this is angles. I know that the whole thing is supposed to give me 70, which means they are adding them together. So we're going to actually write this little piece plus this little piece equals the whole thing. So the measure of angle ABX plus the measure of angle XBC has to equal the measure of angle ABC, the whole thing. And that is that angle addition postulate. So kind of like segment addition says that you can add two segments together. Angle addition says we can add two angles together. Now I've got all my letters in place, but I want the numbers. So we're going to pull the letters out. We're going to drop the numbers in its place. That's going to be substitution. So I just put the 20 in for the ABX. I put the 50 in for the XBC because we were given that information. Now we're going to combine our like terms. All right, and this looks really close to what I'm supposed to prove, but what I'm supposed to prove looks a little bit different. So we're going to flip it over. The measure of angle ABC equals 70. And there is a property that lets you just flip it over, and that would be the symmetric property. So I did have to do one extra step where I flipped it over. And like I said, that one is very similar to several of the homework problems. I think it's like 3 of them. And it does follow the same thing. Like you have 3 given informations. It's pretty similar. You have your angle addition, your substitution, combine your like terms, and then flip it. All right, one more example. This one again is like the homework problems as well. So we're still going to start off with just writing the given information. All right, so angle 1 and angle 2 form a linear pair, and angle 1 equals 30, that's given. And then I did go ahead and write in what I'm trying to prove there at the bottom because I know it has to end there. Step 2 says, are there any vocabulary words? So we do have a vocabulary word here, linear pair. And we know that angle 1 and angle 2 are going to be supplementary because they are a linear pair. And that is the linear pair postulate. So from there, again, I found another vocabulary word, supplementary. What does supplementary mean? Well, supplementary means they add to 180. So now I've got the measure of angle 1 plus the measure of angle 2 equals 180. And that is the definition of supplementary. So we don't have any more vocabulary words to deal with. If I look, I know that I have measure of angle 1 listed a couple times. So I'm going to pull out the letters and I'm going to drop the numbers in its place. So now I've got 30 plus the measure of angle 2 equals 180. And that was substitution because I pulled letters out and put numbers in its place. Now the last step, if I look at what changes between line 5 and line 6, the only thing I did was I subtracted 30 from both sides. And the only thing that lets you subtract from both sides is subtraction. So that's how I kind of did that one. So I think that pretty much sums up the type of problems you're going to have in the homework. So you do have a couple of them like what we did yesterday with the segment addition. And then you're going to have a few kind of random ones that have some stuff filled in for you. And then you have about 5 or 6 that are like these last 2. So it's really going to be beneficial for you to use the notes for the homework. If you have any questions, feel free to email me and I will try to get back with you as soon as possible.